Still some bold predictions on the desk. What do you think of that, Roddy?
I can absolutely see it because I have seen Mana play a lot of this Argent versus Argent stuff, and obviously PartinG is known for a fantastic micro, but Mana's got very, very good micro as well. I think he's got great understanding of how much he can get away with economically, and he is the guy that if you give him enough time that can sneak out a couple of creeps, and his creep movement is really cool because I've already seen some fantastic flanks when they come in from the bottom, they start blowing up a bunch of those Argents, so that is going to be very fun. In the top right side, I believe we took a little look at the main base of Team Liquid's Mana. As PartinG is, of course, the blue Celestial player in the bottom left. I feel like this could start off very, very similar to what we saw PartinG try to do against Maxset.
Yeah.
And let's see if this time we can keep that Morph core alive.
I hope Kalaris doesn't mind this anecdote, but we were watching this in the first series, and he just literally watched this and was like, why didn't I think of this? Usually using the Sovereign's Watch on the Arc ship to help take care of the camp. There's always neat things to find out when you watch these guys. So this is obviously something that is well practiced amongst the pros, and they are going to take the camps. And then, yeah, do we see him actually try and do that rush again?
I kind of think if you do the exact same thing, both players, and right now we are
Yes.
obviously mirroring each other, and there's a good chance that we continue to mirror each other for a little while. I would personally much rather be the defender because that just feels a little bit more natural. Maybe you can get some superior concaves going for yourself as well. It is obviously difficult because you can't give up all the camps in the center. You can't give up the vision towers. So you are going to have to fight a little bit away from your natural, but if Mana has a good read on what PartinG is doing, and I think that he's expecting PartinG to do something very similar to what he was doing in the very first game, I kind of fancy Mana's chances here.
Well, we don't have an attempt to actually fully proxy any of these creation chambers. Just taking care of the camps thus far, very much mirrored. And then I expect to see the same thing with Argent versus Argent. It is a difficult map to, I think, actually secure. Well, I'm not going to say this is the most difficult map. There are some maps are kind of large right now in Stormgate, so to secure your advantage with the slower units can be a bit more difficult. If you do have roly-poly Krees, which we might get to eventually, they're a little better at getting across the map, doing some counterattacks. But it seems like Argents are the way to go, and then just actually getting them behind enemy lines without noticing. Got a Starforge already on the way for Mana.
Wow, that's quick. That is very, very quick. So he really does believe in the Vectors, that if he can just get a couple of them out, he can start microing. He can obviously take advantage of the blink as well, but first he will be forced to build some Argents as he finds one of the healing flowers to make sure that his Argent stays full on HP. He knows that he cannot give up these camps. The 3 camps give a lot more gold right now than they did before. You cannot let a man like PartinG take control of the center and obviously take away all that gold that technically belongs to you because it's on your side of the map.
Yeah, it's supposed to belong to you, but that's kind of the game right now, is arguing over that. And we do see Mana actually just letting it go, realizing that he couldn't do it, or perhaps waiting for a better moment later on. And then the question is it Vectors or Scythe? And there you have it. It is going to be the Scythe. So we saw Maxset kind of use this, but maybe not in the best situation, or perhaps didn't make full use of it as far as the economy behind the harassment. I'm just kind of guessing here, and I'm not saying he's going to worse than Mana, but I think we're going to see the Scythes actually play a very harass-oriented style, sure, but then the expansions behind it and then the development post-Scythe is going to be more interesting. Right now, it is Argent versus Argent.
Yeah, nice Argent movement there by Mana as he gets a full volley off from the high ground against that low ground Argent. But PartinG is already getting himself into a spot that is pretty promising. Perhaps taking a note out of the playbook of Maxset, where it's like, hey, walking past the natural and going straight for those collection arrays in the main base. We're going for a Prism. That's a pretty good play. And Mana is obviously the one who's been tacking up. Mana cannot take the Argent fight right now.
I'm not actually sure that PartinG knows that Scythes are around, so they're going to appear. Kind of like they have to, but I'm not sure if he didn't know that they were actually there, if he didn't scout the Starforge, I wonder if hiding them and just going for your own snipe on his collection array would have been better. Perhaps they weren't numerous enough. Now they are trying to help out, and it seems like they need to. It is going to be respected here by PartinG, but actually getting away from these units is a different question. Mana can't really chase again, maybe until he has a few more. He seems to be going pretty well now, so that is going to punish PartinG for arguably an overreach, but it did get the collection array.
Are you surprised that PartinG did not eventually turn around and start fighting?
Little,
because
yes.
we've been running for a long time right now, and I did feel that he had far superior numbers. Great save there by Mana on one of those sites. Obviously still has the health camp above his natural, so Mana is taking a pretty hefty supply lead here. As PartinG, I think if he would have just taken a fight, that would have honestly been relatively close and competitive, but by walking away for as long as he did, just kept on eating 3 shots over and over again.
Maybe he was actually trying to bait. Okay, there's two options, honestly. Either he was either trying to bait into more reinforcements, or he actually respects the Scythe a lot. And I think that is totally reasonable. Right now, a lot of people, even the guys who have played like 1,000 hours over the entirety of the betas, they don't necessarily know how the matches are going to go, the battles are going to go, like they would in the game they played for 14 years, StarCraft 2. And Scythes do have an ability that activates that makes them not take as much damage, so they are deceiving when you attack them.
Well, Mana is the one who's now getting on top of one of these bases of PartinG. These units obviously stuck. Maybe PartinG can use an overcharge there. Sovereign's watch, and that is exactly what he does. Mana is going to respect that. There's another one that gets popped at the bottom. But yeah, Mana is still just going to fight these Argents where they don't get any protection from those production facilities. And it feels to me that PartinG is in trouble. He's going to have a very hard time taking control of the center of the map.
Yeah, honestly, it's very frustrating to deal with Scythes with only Argents. This is why PartinG did go for the Vectors, and I think he would want to go again, but might be in a weirder situation, basically, as these are going to threaten all of his collection arrays, and they're going to get out almost scot-free, honestly, or even pick up a couple more Argents before they leave.
Mana absolutely dominating here, taking out one of those mines, and now still getting a couple of Argents as well, saving those sites over and over again. Still has that health camp rather on his side of the map. He's baiting out a little bit of a chase there. This is starting to look incredibly promising for the man from Poland, as he could potentially go for this collection array as well, but changes his mind and goes for one of the power benches.
Okay, alright, grab that and then skedaddle. It's all in control for him right now. PartinG finally getting his Vector out, and it's a response, but you know, now it's 1 versus 5 units, and that's just a numbers game.
Yeah, that is complete opposite of what PartinG found himself in the game against Maxet earlier, where he basically had 4 or 5 of those Vectors for 1 or 2 of the sites.
Right.
Now the roles are reversed as Mana is doubling the supply, and that's obviously very telling. One of those sites does get picked up. Same time, a Vector is going to get picked off, and it really does feel that PartinG is going to lose everything of his original setup here.
Yep.
This is just very, very painful for our man from Korea.
Yeah, I mean, if Mana wanted to, he could also take the health camp, but it looks like he's going to go for the throat. He knows he's got the superior army, superior position, and he can camp the Starforge, which is what he is getting at. Eventually, you run out of Sovereign's Watch. You don't have that defense to help you out. You might have a node helping you out, but is that going to be enough as Mana just takes control over the map while doing this?
Yeah, PartinG was forced to drop them relatively early, a couple of times earlier, trying to keep those Argents safe, but he was just so spread out. That is something I've noticed as well that happens often on this map, where it's like the natural is so safe, but the moment you try to go to a third expand location, it actually becomes really hard. Like, where do you take it? And then you suddenly have such a large area of the map to cover. That's obviously something that PartinG found himself in here. He does have a couple of the Vectors. He's going to try to micro them to the best of his abilities. You mentioned the health camp. Mana's having the time of his life here, and this is an unfair fight for PartinG.
I actually wonder if Mana will ever bring over his Arc Ship, because it's also maybe less vulnerable if it does get on the offensive, where maybe you could be scared of the Vectors trying to go for a snipe, I guess. I just speculating out loud. Maybe he really doesn't need it. Maybe it is too valuable. Maybe it's just too busy actually being used to get more ahead back at home, building prisms. So that's certainly is the option. He is doing very well with the Scythes, but it seems like their time might be running out. The Vector count is growing a little. Maybe without that 4th helping, that was a little premature of a blink. He almost gets the Scythe in return. Mana could pull that back. Doesn't do it fast enough.
Well, but he did snipe another collection array, so that, like, even losing 1 or 2 of them is really not that bad. Mana has a couple of Argents walking around as well, and it seems like he's having a hard time making them participate in the battle, but he's got to be incredibly happy with what these sides have been able to do. And it is like 4 or 5 Vectors at this point. Obviously, they do have Blink, but Mana still has this health camp, which honestly feels like a little bit of a cheat code at this point.
It's a little cheeky as well as kind of a cheat code. But it obviously makes sense. He got the money, now he has the heals, and PartinG cannot get it back. Again, it seems like maybe this will eventually tip to PartinG's side for the Vector versus Scythe specifically, but what about the rest of the plan here for Mana? He's still doubling the overall supply, still looks to be in a fantastic position, but it does feel like Vectors would be one of the better units to capitalize on a good fight and counterattack immediately, right? They're fast, they have Blink. Gotta be a little careful and gotta start thinking about the next step.
Does have one of those Luminite camps there to make sure it doesn't fall too far behind economically. I mean, PartinG basically had all the bases, especially after sniping that collection array in the main base of Mana. It did seem that Mana really put all of his eggs in one basket, but I want to say that has paid off. So PartinG still battling, trying to trade out unit for unit. And once upon a time, 6 sites has now become 1. So we have a couple of Argents coming in the mix as well. PartinG is definitely doing a good job in giving him the idea that if he can just stabilize, this game will actually go amazing for PartinG, but I still think it's going to be incredibly difficult to stabilize. These Argents just keep on dying one by one, and it's so hard to get them together.
Honestly, I'm going to ask you, where is Mana Supply? How does he have so much more? I guess it is just all this. Yeah, it's going to be enough, too. But it does seem like we've already witnessed a couple of overextensions when you lose your economy. Trying to end the game can be very difficult. It's just, PartinG's not tapping out just because he wants to have a go at it, but because he really believes if he gets one overextension, his counterattack might be able to deal equivalent damage.
I mean, at this point, PartinG probably feels that he's got slightly more micro potential with his units than Mana has with theirs. So at that point, you always believe that if I can just get the fights going my way and can get one pick off at a time, eventually this could snowball. I have the feeling for every unit that Mana is going to lose, he's going to build 2 in return. He's still been finding economic damage as well. And you were wondering about all Mana supplies was? Well, he kept a couple of units at home to perhaps deal with some of these run-bys to make sure that he wouldn't lose another collection array or a couple of those important prisms. He's healing up his sites here as well. I mean, PartinG is definitely doing a really good job in making this frustrating for Mana. Array. PartinG technically had the better economy, but could not take advantage of that as he just was too spread out.
Well, on to the second map. We did already have that little bit of, again, upset I guess we're talking about, but I think the desk absolutely called it correctly. Mana coming out swinging. A little bit of a surprise. PartinG's have to be very wary of that. Now we're in a second map. We got PartinG in the bottom right, Mana in the top right. It is a 4-player spawn, but you actually cannot spawn horizontal. So close by ground, as we used to call it. But this would be kind of the close by air. And then again, you do have some scans. If you wanted to use them for Celestial versus Celestial, maybe you can wait a little bit longer or just decide not to use it early on. We are seeing those camps being taken in similar fashion on both sides.
Yep. In the beginning, it is incredibly easy to take care of these creep camps. You guys can see the yellow circle. It only has a single yellow bar in it. Throughout the game, the camps respawn, but the creeps do become a lot more powerful. And I've already had a couple moments on me grow where I thought my army was good enough, and then the 40 army supply I had turned into 4 army supply, and I was like, well, I got a bunch of gold, but those creeps were a whole lot more powerful than I thought they were. But in the beginning of the game, especially if it only has 1 yellow bar, it is incredibly easy to creep these camps.
Yeah, this is the typical way that it goes. So no one's going to try and do anything cheeky and actually try and steal it. We even have very similar placement of buildings. Again, I think what's really going to be important is the PartinG's going to have to keep track of any potential tech swaps because he knows the answer. And he even had a couple of moments where it was like, oh, maybe the vectors were enough. It was too late. And with it being kind of, again, that close by air, this isn't nearly as abusive as Jagged Moths, but still, we might actually see Scythe again.
Again, one of the Argents getting a bit of extra energy. They can do bonus damage and creep out things even quicker. Mana was definitely mining a lot more Therium early on than PartinG, which obviously allowed him to pull off the tech switch and get some of those higher tech units. This will be important for PartinG to keep an eye on, because we can already see it in the bottom side of our screen. Mana right now earning some of the Therium. I don't think PartinG is earning anything.
Yeah. Oh, we did see, was it Max said it was very good about only getting enough to get the upgrade for the Argents.
Yeah, and then he just stopped.
Yeah, he literally stopped. So PartinG had a couple of, the gas in the bank, and it wasn't really that helpful. The Therium, and then, they ended up still winning overall anyway. But additional technology coming out from Mana. He had success in the first game. Will he try and mimic that success? That is a different map and a different approach. Different camps too. More fours do break trees, guys. So you're opening up the back entrance to Mana's base currently.
That's actually very cute. I love this. PartinG already thinking that is going to surprise Mana. Because at this point, if you're Mana this early in a Celestial versus Celestial, the last thing that you would be worried about is an army showing up in your main base, and PartinG is even dropping a power bank and a creation chamber, basically in what is supposed to be a very safe pocket expand later on for Mana, that most people take as their 4th base, because you don't have any Therium there in your 3rd. This is really going to completely surprise Mana.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It actually might be too late to have a good response. Collection Array gonna get sniped here, as well as the Prism. The Arc Ship could also be in trouble. Mana is having zero idea that was happening, having a big weakness, and is gonna have a very frustrating loss potentially.
Yep. This is not one of these moments where you ever expect to lose the game already, but this is now already been a successful attack. Mana does have one of the sights out once more early on, but this time PartinG is not overly respecting it. He's actually kind of just clicking in deeper, and he is trying to get on top of those Argents of Mana.
Yep. Yeah, this actually I think is a numbers game. There we have the activation for the scythe to save it for a little while, but that collection array does not have the same ability. That is going down. Arcship did come along with PartinG as well, so he's got a little bit of healing. He could also place his own offensive static defense and batteries, the power banks, and it could get uglier as time goes on. But again, we have seen overextension, so you do want to be careful, especially as the scythe continue to grow in numbers if they continue being retained.
Now it is important to mention that Mana can still get some income. He could still mine even without a collection array. He's just going to mine a whole lot less. The problem is that he didn't just lose one, he lost both of them. And PartinG is here with so many Argents. And this time I feel like he's just playing with a lot more urgency, a lot more belief in the power of the Argent. Yeah, Mana's going to be able to get some micro potential out of these sites. But as you said, Zombie Grub, this is a numbers game and it feels like PartinG is all over Mana. What a cute little play to break down those trees and attack Mana from his own pocket expand.
Very, very frustrating too, because I think there might be a lot of games where you think, oh, this could happen, you know? But then it doesn't happen for so long, you forget about it, and you forget about it in the biggest moment, right? So it's one of those, like, hand on the forehead, just slap your head and be like, oh, okay, I should have maybe been checking that a little bit more. Let's not have that happen again in potentially game 3. Mana, however, as you notice, not tapping on. He's not going to give up quite yet. He has his own possibility of sniping collection arrays with the Vector Scythe duo. That's just going to try and run around, but very weak already.
Technically, none of these units are stuck, as obviously the Vector could go to the left side and could maybe blink away, but the side does get picked up.
Yeah, exactly. There's no Therium in the other natural, but it's still closer to the third, and it just makes more sense, right? So, and in those positions, I guess you would never really trust that as a fourth, but we didn't get nearly that far. Here we are actually in the third map, 1-1, PartinG in the bottom left, Mana in the top right. The Isle of Dread, the name is?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a big one. It's a huge map, and it is where you have multiple entrances into bases. It also just, I think, gets really difficult to track everything the longer the game goes as Celestial, so we're going to see, I think, more of those mistakes as well. And yeah, 100% more collection array snipes.
Yep, and it can be a bit hard to eventually get your hands on more Therium if this is where you decide to expand first, where the double gold looks so appealing for all the races. Especially, I think, for Vanguard players as well, where you bring over the buffs and you power build, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can build buffs for days. Does mean that it's a bit harder to get Therium later, but yeah, if we're just going to spam Argents for a little while, obviously that does not matter. A lot of creep camps as well, especially in the center, that are very useful. Yeah, I think this has potential for a very fun final map. It is fun, because when I came into this day and I looked at the maps, and obviously I've played a bunch of games on these maps, I actually thought this was almost going to be like an insta veto for all the players, for all the races. It's like, it's so large, it's so different. I figured that they would like play on the smaller green maps a little bit more, but we've actually seen it in every single series so far.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some frustration, particularly with Vanguard versus Korea in the 4 patch, where you couldn't really wall at all. Not that SimCity is, I think, as advanced as it is in this game as of yet. I think it's going to get way more interesting. So there was definitely frustrations on the map, but overall it does seem to have come into its own. Just an interesting, different map where that natural is a little more contentious, and the overall map is just huge. And a big fight around the middle. That's where you see a lot of camps in the middle, vision to the side, also where the flowers are. Could see a lot of skirmishes around that.
Both players doing pretty much the same thing so far, as the Argent numbers are going to go up. Creep jacking could become big later on, but in the beginning of the stage, obviously the creeps are relatively weak, that even if you send a single Argent out to creep jack your opponent, they'll look at it and be like, well, I can actually fight you and the creeps at the same time, because the creeps are not very powerful yet. It makes a lot more sense to clean up as many creeps on your side of the map as possible first, then you start looking for creep jacks later on, maybe when the creeps are a bit more powerful.
So Mana was trying to get the Scythe last game. Technically he got there, but not for very long. So there is a trend. We do have 2 Scythe maps from Mana. Will he do it again in the third? Yes, he will. Star Forward is on the way. And I think it is great. I think it was just that he was so surprised so early on, getting Argents in his face with only his first Scythe out. That's just not going to happen on a map like this, no matter how hard you would try to do that. So Mana going to have a little more flexibility there, but PartinG should be very much anticipating that and prepared to add on vectors.
Yes, PartinG can also just make a few more Argents and try to clean up as much of this map as possible, as obviously creeps give so much Illuminite at this point. I mean, he is mining a little bit of Ethereum at this point. It's going to be fun, though, because they both took that base with the double gold, where, you know, all the Luminite in the world, but it is really going to be hard to get a lot of Ethereum later on if you do want to build a lot of those tier 2 units. So I'm very curious to see how this one is going to play out. Trying to keep track of the army movement. Mana currently creeping all the way in the top side of the map. That could have potentially been a little bit risky, because there would have been no way home for these Argents if PartinG would have shown up here.
Yeah, he did make sure, both of them made sure to take the vision camps on either side of the map. And that does, I think it like actually does cover the entrance through the middle, but obviously PartinG could have come in from the left and Mana wouldn't have known. And honestly, that's a pretty common camp progression. I said that weird, progression. So there actually could have maybe been a play there, but not in this particular game. PartinG, actually not getting vectors yet, I'm not sure, but sites are definitely on the way for Mana, and they're going to have a field day running around this large map where your bases are very disconnected.
Once more, I guess we're going to hunt for some collection arrays, maybe snipe a prism if we can. This is a good scout by PartinG, even if he's going to end up losing the Argent. It is nice to get that confirmation of, hey, the first site is out. This is now something I need to officially worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I think he should be predicting it a lot more here. We do have the top bar ability taken out the camp for PartinG. That's exactly what it did. It just took it out. It also replaces it if you use it on your opponent's camp, which is interesting. Not sure we've seen that in too many high-profile games. But yeah, the control is currently going to Mana. He's taking more of the camps. He's going to be threatening run-bys on all the collection arrays, which are right near that high ground, which the sites do love. And you see PartinG trying to compensate for that, putting some static defense back there.
By far and away the riches that both players have been throughout this entire best of 3. I feel like they're going to have so much income to work with. We could get a couple of really crazy battles as the first vectors are out. Mana sees them. He's got his Argents in the mix as well. Seems like PartinG is going to bring his Argents back. They're going to come in through the top right side. This is something that Mana needs to keep in the back of his mind. He's going to have a hard time getting these units out, right? Because if PartinG just wants to take this fight, I'm afraid that Mana's going to have to leave these Argents eventually.
Again, well, now it's 5 sites in the air and 6 of the Argents on the ground. That is a little scary. With the help of some static defense, this might be holdable. I mean, more than holdable, actually. He's even coming in here with a bit of a surround. PartinG with some confidence, actually taking the fight to Mana. Still has a little bit of a static defense helping out, too. Good pullback there from Mana. He's continuing to rally in the site. He does need to do some damage, but unfortunately, he is not winning this battle, losing the sight as he tries to retreat. The blink forward to actually capitalize on it. Mana with the overextension.
Yeah, PartinG did a really good job in kind of guiding Mana all the way back to get a little bit of help from one of those overcharges as well, getting just a tiny bit of damage on, because the fight was close, but it is such a large map, so every unit that Mana builds, especially an Argent, would take forever. But even with sites, it takes a long time before they make it to the bottom left side. Meanwhile, every unit that PartinG builds is there immediately, participates in the battle, and then obviously using Sovereign's Watch to get a little bit of extra chip damage in. Could have potentially made a difference there. If I was PartinG, I'd be feeling very good about it, especially since it does feel that his unit should scale a little bit better. Even if these sites are always scary and always dangerous, PartinG with a bunch of vectors seems like it's very difficult to deal with if you don't have your own blink units yourself.
Yeah, I do feel like the sites... Okay, so obviously Mana knows way better than I do, but he's using them in a fight-on-fight, which sometimes is the better idea, but the vector number has grown. He's not winning fights anymore. He's even getting caught in the rally. These Scythe units are just obnoxious, guys. If you run around killing all the collection arrays and prisms, that's where it feels tilting. That's where it feels good. Taking direct fights, yeah, it could have worked if he had judged it correctly, but frankly, he didn't. And now he's really feeling the repercussions.
Why does it feel like this is PartinG hunting down a couple Metavacs with Blinkstalk as these vectors are roaming the center of the map, trying to pick off these low HP sites? Mana did save a couple of them, but now his own main base is so exposed. These prisms are going to get popped immediately. The collection array is going to get picked up as well. This is going to be very difficult. Mana may eventually push this back, but it feels that whatever PartinG does here, it is always going to be good.
Yeah. Actually, he has a lot more sites than I thought he did. It's like suddenly he has a bunch, so maybe he can come in here. 2 very weak, doesn't want to put them in until they're a little more healed up. Hopefully the rest can do the trick. It does seem like that is the case. Vectors gonna get out of here. They did do some economic damage and definitely took down some scythes, but I did not give Mana enough credit. That's a lot more than I thought he had.
Obviously, they are both pretty damn rich since they have that double Luminite mine to work from the very beginning, and they didn't spend crazy amounts of Ethereum early on. Yes?
He never took the second one, though. Mana did.
That's correct. Also only has a single prism. I mean, he did just lose a lot of prisms in his main. He's got units here, but having units at home or bringing all those units to the other side of the map and then potentially fighting in range of a Sovereign's Watch or two, right? We've already seen that as well. Still seem like that is going to be incredibly difficult. It's one of these games where the supplies look even, but you feel like PartinG is just going to explode in the next 90 seconds, and Mana's going to have a hard time throwing.
Yeah. He still has a very scary army, not maybe in the direct battles, because the Vector army is currently dealing with it. But again, if he gets some to go for backstabs, then that's where it can get frustrating. PartinG really has to worry about just rallying forward, and it gets a little more complicated. So still definitely giving Mana a chance here. Defensively, he can work out with a static defense for a while, and it looks like he is going to think he can do this. So he's going to go for the run by. It's seen PartinG those camps. They're not vision camps, but you do have a little vision on any camp you have.
Yep, so PartinG knows exactly what is up. Don't know if he finished off that camp on Mana's side of the map, but that obviously always feels great once you're taking those creeps away from your opponent, especially since Mana's already hurting a little bit economically. Seems like PartinG didn't finish them quite off, but then the creeps do get one of the Argents. Mana is here as he's going to try to find some economic damage. Finds the first collection array very quickly. Probably going to get the second one, but I can't imagine that he's not going to lose a bunch of sides here as PartinG is coming in from the right. These units can blink. They do use one of the blinks. This definitely was not for free on Mana's side.
No, it was not. Not able to escape with a ton of scythes. Some, 5 literally getting away there. So once again, the worry is him being able to defend. If he had been able to snipe 2 collection arrays and get out with every single scythe, that would have been freaking amazing. But PartinG, the mobility of the vectors, and PartinG being PartinG with Blink, right, was definitely caught up. You know, he knew that he could chase him down. He knew he'd get the ultimate better battle, and now he just has so many vectors.
PartinG having 2 different groups of vectors is really awesome there too, right? Because he shows the first group like, hey, I'm here, I'm putting out damage. Mana's like, well, gotta get those collection arrays, and then hopefully I can still get out. And that's when that second group shows up and hits him with the devastating blink right underneath all those sites. PartinG getting so many additional hits off that Mana obviously was not looking forward to. Feels that Mana is in a lot of trouble. I think Mana knows that he's in a lot of trouble. Maybe hoping that PartinG overextends, takes a bad fight in the Sovereign's Watch, but really does feel that PartinG has got this game by the horns. Has a really good read on the situation, and just this is his game at this point. The world is his oyster.
It is. It is. Mana's whole plan here, not really, again, working out quite as well as it could. Definitely not the same exact game as Max Edge 1, but it's kind of the same vibe or the same pace, right? Where it's like the scythes kind of look good in a direct battle once or twice. They look really frustrating when they go for the snipes, but then those vectors are actually the answer. So as soon as they get into a number, they are more mobile and, well, arguably more mobile. They're mobile in different ways, but they're able to punish, is what I'm trying to say. And that is what's happened once again. PartinG taking control of this game, over double the supply. Scythe's going to go for a little run by, and that's great, but Mana is still only on 1 collection array. Maybe he did get a second one, but he lost that main one ages ago.
Yeah, he's dealing good economic damage, but it just feels like it's a day late and $1 short because he's bleeding out some very expensive units here too. PartinG is going to chase them down. Mana's going to try to turn around, but perhaps PartinG caught a glimpse of that. Not totally certain. It just feels that it's going to be so damn difficult for Mana to ever get another base up and running, as these units have turned around, so they will get a blink off, and the first site goes down, the second one goes down as well. PartinG is all over Mana and is just reading him like a book.
Yeah, he is. You know, Mana, he was quite dedicated, actually. His economy was not very strong. He went for the double Luminite, but they didn't actually take it. So this was more committed. It did have to do some damage. And you know what actually seems to be the case here is that this map just calls for people to overextend in this position. Now, this is clearly too many numbers. I'm not worried about PartinG doing that, but it did kind of happen with Mana. The choke there is so powerful for the defense that PartinG was able to hold against the initial scary scythes, and then just worked out with these vectors, which I guess they'll take a while to kill the entire base, but they don't have to. They just kill the collection array.
Yeah, and with the sites, obviously the sites are pretty quick. They could temporarily disengage, but Mana was there with his Argents as well. And once the Argents are there, you're just kind of committed to the fight. You're stuck because those units can never make it home, especially not if PartinG is roaming the map with a couple of these very quick vectors. And he may not have that many yet at that point, but even if it's only 3 or 4 vectors, 5 Argents, too much to just leave all by themselves and let them die for nothing. But running them home is also not really a play, as Mana realizes he is just too far behind. GG, well played, gets called. And it is PartinG who wins the upper bracket final. 2-1. A couple of very